you're 17, you get a part-time job at a supermarket. You're delivering groceries. You end up meeting a woman named Linda Shiro,
Yes.
which led to a big change in your life at that time. Can you
Well,
talk about first meeting her and how it progressed from there?
yeah. Well, I was working, like I said, for the supermarket. I had other jobs too. I was also working weekends as a busboy in a catering hall. Uh, I was always hustling to make money, but that job happened to be a really good job because I made a lot in tips when I would make deliveries to houses, and I got my paycheck. So for a 17-year-old, I was doing pretty good. I mean, and you're going back to like 78, we're talking now, 77, 78, 79. I was making in tips from Thursday to Saturday, you know, and Jimmy was my partner. We were each making the same thing. So we were probably making about probably 500 each just in tips
Mm.
alone, plus our pay. So we were making like 800 a week, just working in a supermarket, somewhat part time. And one of my jobs was, like I said, to deliver groceries, big orders to the houses. And that was very, very busy on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So, long story short, I started delivering to this one lady, Linda. And the funny thing is, I had a few flings on the route. It was funny because, there's some housewives, they're lonely or whatever. And there was things that would happen. But this one was like incredible because, uh, she really came on to me, and I was turned on by her. She was a good looking lady, girl, whatever at the time. She was about 31 and I was 17. So as I kept delivering to her house, she got more and more friendly, even offering me drinks. And I said, I can't, I'm at work, but she got very close and open and eventually asked me. She just asked me outright, do you fool around? And I remember at that age, I said, of course I do. I thought it was like a silly question. I made a comment like, what do you think? I'm gay? I mean, just this, as a kid.
Yeah.
So we got closer and closer. And then eventually, I told her I was 18 because if I was under 18, it would have been bad, you know? So I lied to her. So she didn't do anything wrong as far as that. And she told me she was 29 when she was over 30, like 31 or 32. And I guess 29 sounded better. And we wound up getting very close, having an affair. And the affair lasted almost 10 years. So it was a serious relationship. And at first, I didn't know she was married. I assumed she was. Then I heard about the kids. So then I really knew that she had to be married, but never, the husband was never around. I thought he might have been a salesman or traveling something. But we had our moment, plenty of time together. And eventually, it got so tight and so close that she felt she wanted me to meet him.
Right. Now you mentioned she eventually, about 6 months into the relationship, convinces you to meet her husband. That probably would have ran most kids at that age. It probably would have ran them
Mm-hmm.
off. But what was going through your head when she brings
Well,
that up?
most kids wouldn't be in that predicament or that situation. It's rare that a married woman would seduce. It doesn't happen all the time. It's not like we were the same age in high school. So, I don't think it, and now I have feelings for her. So when she told me this,
Hmm.
and she's telling me, she's very convincing, telling me it'll help me. He's a very prominent man. He's got a lot of influence. He can help you in business. So as a kid, I'm eating this all up, and I still don't think I should meet him. But like I said, she's convincing, and then laid out a game plan. Where they had a company they were opening up, and she was part of the board, and they needed a sales manager for the East Coast region. So all of this coming together, made it where I says, okay, I'll meet him. Crazy, you're right. Most guys
Yeah.
would have ran. And if I knew exactly who he was, and and the night I saw him, I knew. Then I knew he was not I knew exactly what he was, just the way he carried himself.
Right. Yeah, and I want to ask you about that first meeting and when you
Mhm.
saw him approaching the house. But before we get there, a lot of people watching this are probably familiar with Greg Scarpa. Um, but can you talk about who he was at that time, uh, his reputation at that time that we're
Well,
talking about?
I can tell you that now in hindsight, but at that moment I didn't know.
Right.
But it turns out that he was a very high-ranking member of the Colombo family. The reason I say that is because a lot of people don't understand what it is to be a boss's man. He was a boss's man back in the Profaci days. Okay, that's before Junior Persico, when the Gallows and Profacis went to war for control of the family. That was the first war. And there was another one. It was three wars, just in the time that almost that I was there. Uh, so he, being a boss's man, you go direct to the boss. You don't have a captain. You don't have to go to the consigliere. And in some ways, that puts you above the captains because you're going straight to the boss. So he never had a title of captain. And later on, we found out probably why. But
Right.
he was definitely a feared, and I don't say respected because it's fear. He was feared because he'd kill you in a heartbeat, and just go have lunch right after.
Yeah.
He was known for that. So yeah, I didn't know really early on, but later on I found out, and he didn't get the Grim Reaper name until later on. He was just known as Greg from 13th Avenue.
So you're about to meet Greg Scarpa. You're sleeping with his wife, and now she mentions he may have this job opportunity for you. Talk about the first time meeting Greg Scarpa.
Well, it was set up for us to go to the restaurant to meet the partners, the other people that were involved in this company. There was a lawyer, Stanley Meyer. Uh, there was an accountant. I forget his name. I shouldn't forget his name. And then there was uh, the third partner from Hewlett Supply Company that originated out in Long Island. That they were branching out, making it bigger, and this how it all came together. So I'm at the house. I get there early because she says he comes home at 5 o'clock every night. Actually, at 5:10, he leaves the club at 5. Takes about 10, 15 minutes to get home. So like 5:15. So I got there probably 4:30, and I remember, now I was learning how to drink wine because I was with her for about 6 months, and not that I didn't drink before. 16, 17, we all experimented, whatever. But I was starting to enjoy the wine, so I became a wine drinker. But that night, knowing I was going to meet him, I remember telling her I'd like to have a vodka tonight. So she made me a little vodka, and I'm drinking it. And I'm looking out the window, actually waiting for the car to pull up. I don't even know what he drives. So I see cars going by, and it's not him, not him, not him. Eventually, a big black Fleetwood Brown from like 78, brand new, tinted windows, spoke wheels. I mean, this car said gangster.
Right.
He pulled into the driveway, and when he got out, very, very, what's the word? Almost robotic, the way he was, the way he got out of the car, the way he closed the car. I remember everything about him. And I always said he swaggered. He didn't walk. He had a swagger to him as he walked to the house, dark sunglasses on, although it was getting dark at night. The sun was coming down. It was wintertime. And he had a sport jacket on, dressed like you would see in the old days, gangsters dressing. And just as he walked to the door, I knew this wasn't what I thought. He was no doctor, whatever. This is a man's man. And I remember he came up to the door. I reached my hand out. I opened the door because I was already in the house. And I stuck my hand out and I said, "I'm Larry." And he puts his hand out and he says, "I'm Greg." And up to that point, I thought his name was Charles Shiro. So I was confused, to say the least. I didn't understand what was going on with that. And then he went inside to change, take his sport jacket off, whatever. And he comes back with two scotches. I never drank scotch before in my life, and I just had some vodka. But I didn't say no, so I took the scotch, and this is great, even though I really like it at first. But I had a drink with him, And, you know, a little small talk. He's telling me about the company. And he always kept throwing in there how Linda really thinks she'd be great for this and blah, blah, blah. So ultimately, we went to the restaurant. And when we walked in there, I saw even more of what he was, because the whole place came running over to him, kissing him, hugging him. The bartenders, the maitre d', the owner, who was also the chef, Ralph. So, you know, now at that point, I knew there was more to this picture, and I was starting to get apprehensive already. But then he tells the guys when they come in, he doesn't mention me as a potential sales manager. He doesn't say, I have this guy, let's give him a shot. He looks at him, he says, say hello to your new sales manager. That was it. I was the sales manager. And I ran with that for a while, and it really was actually a good little gig until the company, literally went up in flames. The warehouse went up in flames. And to this day, I don't know why, or if it was an insurance job or what. But that was after about probably almost a year of the business and making some good money. And then I was back in no man's land.
Now during this time, Greg Scarpa, Linda, and yourself, you're all becoming real close. You write in the book that the three of you would go out to eat with your parents, have barbecues together.
Yeah.
What did your parents think of Greg and Linda?
Well, you know, they never knew really later on, as I was getting deeper and deeper in. What they knew at the beginning, I had the sales manager job. I never needed money. I was paying my bills. I had a car. They thought I was living a pretty good life. And they, like it says, my Uncle Albert is my mom's brother. So they weren't, you know, naive to Brooklyn and wise guys. So that wasn't a horrible thing or a turnoff. Again, thinking that I was just going to use his influence to do good things, you know, like the jobs. And eventually I got into other rackets and was still making money. So there was no reason for anybody to be concerned. The one person that knew was my grandmother. She never liked him. She called him the devil. And she tried to have my mother stop me from hanging around with him. But now I was, you know, over 18. I was 19 or 20, you know. And again, I was living my own life. Yeah. So, yeah. But I kept them really out of the loop, you know. They got nervous later on during the war when they would read the newspapers, and eventually in court is when it all came out and they saw that I was just, you know, what I become.
Right. Now, almost right off the bat, Greg is very accepting of you with these job opportunities, and he even calls you his nephew. Why do you think that was, that he was so accepting of you?
Well, I think first of all, he took a liking to me. I don't have many enemies. Most people, I get along with a lot of people. I'm honest and I'm upfront, and they know what they're going to get with me. I never, later on, I didn't push my weight around. I just was always someone that people gravitated to. And I think he genuinely took affection to me as a dear friend or as a nephew. Also, I think he liked the fact that I made his life easier. And he always said he wanted Linda to be happy. And how happy could she be if he's away, you know, 4 nights a week and she's got the kids? And, you know, it becomes, so I made his life easier. And then when we had the conversation and the three of us knew, that's when it became like 3 peas in a pod, where we became super close. And I just, you know, and I do believe he cared for me. But, you know, I said in the book, I learned that he really didn't care for, I don't think he truly loved anybody.
Every move calculated, this is how he stayed. American made, leather shoe, sharp blade, dice.